that, but I want to say quickly, they were asked to infiltrate into the theater. Now, infiltrate is the euphemism the senior leaders use. We don't want anyone to know that we're going to exceed the troop ceiling. Therefore, you won't have deployment orders. We wish you the best of luck and hope you can get there in time. So they moved without deployment orders. I mean, this is kind of like the reverse of going AWOL. You know, they left without orders to go to a combat zone as opposed to leaving without orders to go on leave. Sir, if you chit-chat about that, and I think the statute of limitations is...
Really, it was a great example of the problem-solving ability of the American soldier. And the lesson that I took away from the whole deal, and then I'll get into some details, prove my point, was that the United States Army has trained us all to be problem solvers. And if we're just sort of told what needs to be done, soldiers will figure it out. And the chain of command can be a marvelous thing when you've got an enterprise like that. But the whole thing started out, the 1st Division Forward had been called in, and that was the 3rd Brigade plug. It had 4,000 odd soldiers. I had all, in miniature, had the capabilities of the division. I had my own MI, my own comms, helicopters, CAV, aviation, artillery, infantry, armor, engineers, the whole schmear. And General Saint called several of us to the meeting, swore us to secrecy, and said as part of one of the treaties with the Russians, you're going to be inactivated. You're going to stop getting replacements, and eventually you'll get orders and you'll turn in your stuff. And we were in the midst of all of that when the 7th Corps, the Germany-based Corps headquarters, received the orders to deploy to Saudi Arabia for, at the time it was Desert Shield, but the build-up to prep for Desert Storm. And that same decision to bring in another Corps, 18th Corps had already deployed, the speed bumps we call them, and they were going to bring in the heavy Corps. And the Division Forward had turned in all of our tanks and artillery and a lot of trucks, but we still had all the people, had all the chain of command, and we got this order to provide drivers. And Steve Westbrook, the brigade commander, looked at the order and said what they really need is a headquarters to control all of the stuff that's going to be going on. We had no idea what everything that would have to happen would be. And I went down to 7th Corps, to General Franks, and said, sir, he's a West Point classmate of mine. He was Fred most of the time, but that day he was sir. And I told him that, or recommended that he deploy the Division Forward, the headquarters, the RSO and I, mission that the Corps had. The Corps had been told to self-deploy. The DISCOM, or the Support Command, the CENTCOM had set up, did not have the capability to bring the 7th Corps into the theater and get them out to the desert and move all of the mountains of stuff that was already in theater in preparation for the war, and move it over from the Gulf Coast and spread away out to the flank where the 7th Corps was going to do the big left hook. All that is background. 7th Corps was told to deploy itself. They set up an ad hoc headquarters. We convinced them to take us and plug us into the mix, and then we began to make our way to Europe. The way the military works today, there's a time-phase force deployment list that is made up by all the major commands, a great deal of many staff meetings and all kinds of computer exercises, but essentially the result of all that is that every unit that's on the tip fiddle, the Air Force knows exactly how many, what kinds of equipment, how many numbers of people, and which airplane they're going to put it on. And the crew chief, the loadmaster of the airplane, knows exactly what he's supposed to get. And all of a sudden, we had the problem of trying to get about 1,400 soldiers down there into Saudi Arabia to do this job that Greg described this morning. And we solved it by going down to the departure airfields, and the guys had asked the loadmaster, "Can you take any soldiers?" And all they looked at was the U.S. on the name tag, so I can take 3 guys. We shoved 3 guys on it, and we stayed just ahead of the arriving soldiers. We were given planning figures on how many soldiers would be housed in the ports while they're waiting for their vehicles to arrive so they can go out into the desert. And I think order of magnitude, the peak was going to be about 25,000. I think we did 40,000 in a couple of days. But the wonderful 1st Division soldiers just improvised. And the CENTCOM support command improvised. They could see that we were overloading, so we started making a tent city out in the desert. Well, the deploying units needed canvas, so we were putting up tents at one end of the place, and we were tearing down tents we'd already put up so that the unit that was moving out into the desert could have the canvas and all that kind of business. And about every day we would receive something else that needs to be done. The tanks all have to be painted, the carc painting, the helicopter blades something has to happen to the helicopter. But again, 1st Division, and I really do think it was part of it was 1st Division, these guys deployed. And if I needed somebody to put together convoys, because all of a sudden that turned up as a shortfall, I just reached back to Germany and grabbed one of these magnificent battalion commanders that we had the division forward, and he'd come forward, Mike Griswold, and he would take care of stuff like that. Smartest move I made was putting Russ Honorary in charge of the port at Damon. Russ is the Raging Cajun that brought all of the relief supplies in New Orleans after Katrina, and made that immortal comment to a reporter at a press conference when the guy asked a question that had already been answered, and Russ says, "Don't get stuck on stupid." But he was just the guy for that job, and because 1st Division was easy to work with because we all knew each other, and that was easy. And in fact, again, statute of limitations run out. At least one of your commanders said, "Gee whiz, we don't have whatever it was." And we reached back to Germany and got whatever it was. And I didn't know about it until well after it happened. That was done battalion commander, and it worked out just fine.
That is, if I could jump in, that is absolutely true, because the Army has this vision of cohesion now based on what's called Army Force Generation. So they take a brigade out of the inventory for about 7 or 8 months to build it up, train it maybe a year. Then they use it for a year, then they come back and they break it up. So what you have is a highly cohesive formation for 12 months. What we did with the way we were doing things in the Army in those days with paired battalions, Mike Griswold was Executive Officer 134 when I was the Executive Officer, XO 134. When I went to the NTC as a Battalion Commander 234, he went and took 334. Then came to Al Jabal and ran that port. Russ Honoré and I he was the Operations Officer for General Watts. I was the Plans Officer for General Watts. Honoré and I, are old friends at that point. I'm at his headquarters one day, and he came out to say goodbye to me. I was getting ready to go back, and he said, "I can't let you go to the field on these Maypops," because I had 1st Division Humvee tires, which means that they had been new many years ago. And he had his driver put his brand new Imperial Army of the Rhine tires on my old Maypops, and I had decent tires. And another guy, Don Schenck, said to me that it really made a lot of difference when you went over to get something or do something or work something, and the guy was wearing the same left sleeve patch that you did, and you'd served with him before. And that's that quality of cohesion associated with the division is fundamentally different than what we're doing now. And I think personally that it's going to hurt us. Last tale, and I'm going to ask General Ray to talk about some things, is the young captain named Dave Cavalieri commanded A Company, I think it was, of 334 Armor. He became the guy that ran the unloading operation for all of the ships coming in to unload every piece of kit that came in. Now, tankers are trained to drive tanks. They drove every piece of equipment the 1st Infantry Division was blessed with, including arachnid-looking things that belong to the engineer battalion and the support battalions that nobody could tell you the name of, let alone how to start it and operate it. He unloaded day and night with that crowd and marshaled them. So here you are, you're in an Arab country that's not used to receiving Americans, doesn't even like the idea, and you're operating inside one of their ports. Cavalieri did all of that with a bunch of dumbass tankers, and pardon my language. But that's the kind of quality of people we're talking about. I asked General Rain if you take a minute or two to talk about preparation and anything else you care to, because I'm kind of exceeding my authority, the only colonel in the room directing two general officers.
You do.
It doesn't happen often. I'm enjoying it quite a lot.
For a Louisiana guy, you know.
It didn't seem to inhibit you any.
No, that's because we both have the benefit of a Louisiana public education. All right, sir, you're on.
When we got the order, that the mission was sort of simple to me, the one that I got. It says, deploy the division of Saudi Arabia and join the 7th Corps. That's all they said, you know. And then I knew that involved rail loading every piece of equipment that we had down to Beaumont, putting it on a ship, sending it to Saudi Arabia. God, I didn't even have a clue what the hell was going to happen after that, but get it out of there. Then I knew that I had to put the soldiers on a bus, take them to Topeka, fly them to Saudi Arabia on chartered aircraft. And how we're going to link all that up, I didn't have a clue. My mission was to get the division out of Fort Riley, Kansas. And so I went over on the recon, and then I came back, and then here's some of the things that happened. Okay, number one, oh, didn't we tell you? We're going to take all of your wheels away from you, and we're going to give you new stuff. And I said, well, that's nice. Oh, and you got to paint it desert brown before it goes because NATO green is out. Well, that sounds really simple, but a train comes in with 900 series 5-ton trucks on it. You got to run them from there to paint and load them in 2 days on a train. Now listen, ordinary rookies can't do that stuff, but there's something about a bunch of 1st Division guys and gals led by the right kind of officers and non-commissioned officers. They just get stuff done. No mission too difficult, no sacrifice too great, duty first. It's in their brain. It's in their DNA. That's the way we are. And you know, the thought of, oh, we can't do that doesn't occur. People scurry around and make stuff up. I stood on the railhead in total amazement, just watching stuff happen get out of there. It's like we had these 151 Jeeps. You remember them all. They're just Jeeps, you know. In 72 hours, they all were parked down in some godforsaken lot off of nowhere with no radios or nothing on them. A train shows up with Humvees, which nobody had ever seen before. I'd seen pictures of them in Army magazine, you know. And somebody says, well, we got a train to use them. I said, right, unload them and drive them. Just turn them over to the soldiers, they'll figure it out. We didn't have time to do all this net training stuff. Oh, and they had to be painted brown too. And then we loaded them in about a week. That kind of stuff going. Engineer equipment was the same way. But we got it all done and we got it out of there. The tanks, the artillery pieces, and the Bradleys were easy. All they had to do was be painted and shipped because we weren't swapping any of those out. Because the word was, don't worry about all that, General. We'll switch all that out in Saudi Arabia. I said, what? Yeah, we're going to switch all that stuff out after you get there. And I said, well, that'll be interesting. I can visualize how is all this going to work, and I didn't have a clue because he and I were just trying to get out of Riley. It's like I came on my recon. General Barry McCaffrey was the 24th Division CG. First thing he told me, got to have a GPS, you can't operate over here. Well, it was very obvious rolling around in the desert is kind of like being on a boat in the middle of the ocean. If you don't have a GPS, you don't have a clue where you're at. So dutifully, I went to the United States Army and said, I'd like to have some GPSs. They said, we can get them for you in 2 years. Well, I said, that'd be helpful. So I figured, well, obviously we can't get GPS. So my G3 comes running in, Terry Bullington, and he's got a Field and Stream magazine in his hand. He flips over to the back page, and he says, hey, look here, boss, Magellan. They got GPSs, and they got antennas that you can mount on vehicles. And I said, how many we need? He said, I think it's around 300. I said, well, order 600. So he dutifully goes down and gets Val Willis, our contract officer. She's got a credit card. Bullington calls with them sitting down and contracting. He calls Magellan. And he goes through about 9 different layers to get to somebody that can really answer his question. And he said, well, sure, we got him. He said, how many would you like? And I'm sure the clerk thought maybe 5, 6, or 7. He said, we'd like 600. And then it got real quiet on the phone, you know. And the lady says, we can only ship you 300. And we can't give them to you in green because they're white. So Bullington says, I gotta have 600. We'll take the 300, but I gotta have 300 more. She said, not to worry. And she gave us a timeline and said, pick them up in Daharan at the FedEx office. And gave us a date. You know what? We went there on that day with a Humvee and picked up 300 GPSs at the FedEx office and took them to the desert. If we didn't have GPSs, we would still be in the desert trying to find out what the hell we were.
Well, and let the record show that Colonel Bullington was investigated by the United States government for an unauthorized purchase of end items when he got back, which is, your government in action. He used the wrong, he used training money to make an unauthorized COTS purchase, is what we call it now. But that kind of thing had to happen. The old man forgot to tell you that we were so good at painting carp because we just painted all of our vehicles in forest green camouflage.
Oh, yeah.
And we had the best looking forest green camouflage tank fleet in America, and then had to repaint it. I think it was about 2 months maybe after we got done painting them the first time.
It was unbelievable.
So
how
we were
fast.
painting fools. The other thing I want to leave you with is, I brought this thing from Division Support Command. I wish Bob Shadley was here to speak for himself, because the logistics undertaking of 65,000 short tons doesn't mean much. 14 ships doesn't mean much until you look at a picture of the kind of ships. We were talking, my personal favorite was a nasty looking rust bucket named the Jolly Rubino that hauled the 1st Brigade, 1st Infantry Division, almost all of its equipment. You think about how big a ship that is, and you look at the scale of effort. For example, just going to list a
Tribute to the soldier and his Big Red One soldier, particularly in his unique way of looking at things. General Franks called me and said, Bill, there's a problem down at the aerial port of delivery, APON. And basically what's happening is stuff's coming in, boxes addressed to the division, things like airplane engines and all kinds of stuff. But stuff being sent to the 7th Corps, like to everybody, but I want you to take care of 7th Corps stuff, is being ripped off. The people are pilfering those boxes. One particular, kind of a real crime was some great big box that the medical units had, or a certain echelon of medical units, MASH or something. But one of the things it had in it was some kind of a chocolate drink, and it was designed to give the wounded soldiers. But these guys in the rear had figured out that stuff was good to drink, and they were stealing it. And anyway, General Frank said, can you do something? And I went and grabbed a infantry squad leader. I took him down to the yard. We're going to get your squad. Whole squad, I want you to secure me. And I walked him around and was showing him the situation as I had seen it. And he turned to me and he said, sir, it's got to be rents that are doing that. A combat soldier would not rob from another combat soldier like that. Now, that ended the problem as far as 7th Corps stuff was concerned. But the big one soldier's done it, they wouldn't let anybody near this stuff.
One of the other interesting things that went on in the war is we got over there, and you know, assumptions you make. Vietnam, right? You never worried about cigarettes, cigars, chewing tobacco, chiclets, candy. You don't worry about that because that came in a Sunday pack. And you know, we all figured out he smoked Salems, he smoked Pall Malls, he smoked Camels, you know, and a platoon would divvy out the goodies. Well, all the do-gooders have gotten rid of all that stuff. So that evil tobacco is not in the field, but don't worry, nobody smokes, nobody chews anymore.
That's a health risk.
Let me tell you a little secret about soldiers. When they leave the lovely young brides at Fort Riley and they deploy, suddenly everybody's got a round can in his back pocket, he's got a plug in his pocket, or he's resumed his smoking, which he hadn't been able to do at Fort Riley because the visit had been on him, okay? So the closet smokers and the closet chewers and the closet doers all come out. This is a big crisis in the 1st Infantry Division. I mean, I'm visiting units, and I asked the soldier, I said, how you doing? Sir, we're doing great. Oh, by the way, I need some Skoal. And I said, what? I need some Skoal. And see, I had assumed all this time that we would be I hadn't thought about it, you know? And so I told Colonel Shadley, I said, you get some smart guys, you get 2 18-foot, that big long trailers, and you go to Daharan and don't come back until it's full of tobacco. What kind? I said, whatever they got in the PX. And then the second crisis, which we still don't understand today, there was no coffee in the 1st Infantry Division. You remember that?
Oh, yes, sir.
There was no coffee.
No coffee, no smokes, man, life was
I mean, I understood that your rations was in the hands of the nearest forklift operator. Because the forklift operator went in and he picked up, what is that, shrimp Creole?
Shrimp Creole, yeah, that's
He
good stuff.
picked up a pallet of that and he sent it to Division Headquarters. That's all you ate for a week was shrimp Creole. And then he'd pick up chili mac and then he'd bring that and you'd eat that for a week. But no coffee, and we had to do the same thing with coffee because the Army, it can't exist without coffee. I mean, soldiers' morale goes in the toilet fast when you take that away. So those were 2 big, huge crises for me personally in the desert when that all happened. Remember that?
Like, sir, I told Joe Carter one day I could no longer let him have any cigarettes. I said I didn't have enough for him and me. Anybody have any questions or criticisms?
What happened to the G4 and the...
We had a mission to accomplish. You told me to do this stuff. We got it done. You know, and I said, look, you guys have got to make this crap go away because there's nothing done here illegal. And then I gave my IG a lesson in COTS procurement and all that stuff. And we didn't cover it up, but I just beat them off. I wouldn't let them get at it.
We also had impact funds that got investigated because you're in Saudi Arabia. It's not like the rest of the planet.
But it's
you could buy
amazing.
anything in Saudi Arabia.
It's amazing how that when you got a mission to get done, you think you're doing the right thing because you're going to get it done, okay? And then after it's all over and the smoke all clears, then all these people come out and they want to help you make sure all this stuff was done properly.
Yeah.
That's Monday morning quarterbacking. It doesn't help you. I mean, the war is over, you know? The war is over. We won. Put it
They wouldn't let us bring back any souvenirs. So the old man says, hey, you got to destroy bayonets. I had thousands of bayonets.
Thousands.
So I held on to them, and finally, I don't remember who, maybe it was General Maggart, Burt Maggart, said, hey, you got to get rid of these things. The next day, after I had burned these things, melted them and C4'd them and all kinds of stuff, because destroying bayonets is harder than it sounds. They said, oh, it's okay to bring home bayonets. And that, I mean, it's exactly, it was constant
In one
change.
In 1 week, we destroyed over 10,000 bayonets in the division. The next day, we were told we take them home.
Yeah. It was, you know, that's the Army, you know.
Senator Dole told me he would really like a bayonet. You know, we were up talking. I said, sure, I'll see if I can get you one. Well, how am I going to get it to the guy? I wasn't going to go to jail for even a senator of the United States, you know. But right at the end, though, they released it. I went hunting one and found one and gave him a bayonet.
So Dole got a bayonet, but Greg didn't. Existed on the planet.
No, I didn't.
And they had ammunition and gear out the wazoo, and yet they had no means to distribute. I think it's just the corruption of the culture was such that we would capture guys that were in street shoes. There's possibly apocryphal story. One guy got captured was wearing a business suit because he'd been scarfed up from one of the reserve divisions. Who knows? I mean, that place was dramatically corrupt. I think the other thing that's fair to say is you guys in Vietnam fought competent opponents. We did not. You know, these guys they had low levels of competence. They had lots of equipment. And their generals, and the Iraqi documents were available. Now you can read what their generals were thinking. They mostly understood what was happening to them. But their units couldn't execute because they didn't, the culture is such that there's no, if nobody saw it happen, it never occurred. So if a general officer wasn't personally checking things, it just didn't happen. And that's how they fought.
And the other thing is, everything is so centralized at a very high level, and they have no non-commissioned officer corps, none. So it's privates and colonels. And nobody can make a decision except the general. So what happens is it explains a lot of the Israeli success.
Yes, I have a different impression of the Israelis.
It explains a lot about how we ripped them apart, and they, you know, I remember at the ceasefire negotiation, these Iraqi lieutenant generals are sitting across, and Schwarzkopf, the first thing that he put on the table was the exchange of prisoners. And it wasn't like we want, it was like you must. We are going to trade, we want the Kuwaiti, we want the Saudi, and we want the American prisoners back. And there was silence. After they agreed, there was silence. And Schwarzkopf, I remember him leaning up on his, you know, the bear, he leans up on his elbows, he said, "Don't you want yours back?" And the translator said that, and the guy said, "How many do you have?" And he said, and Schwarzkopf said, "Tell him it's somewhere around 50,000. And I thought this Iraqi general was going to faint. They didn't have a clue. They had no idea of the devastation that had occurred. So what happened on the battlefield and the way it was translated and understood back at the highest levels in the Iraqi army was daylight and dark. Those guys drove down out there and they didn't have a clue. They knew they had been beaten. They knew they had been devastated. They knew they were in deep trouble. But they had no idea of the devastation.
They lost the picture after day two.
Yeah.
After day two, they no longer understood what was happening.
I'm gonna have to interrupt you.
Yep, we're done.
You got a luncheon in about 7 minutes.
That's fine.
The Desert
That's fine.
Storm lunch.